the screen here. We're right smack in the middle of earnings season. About 300 of the S&P 500 companies report next week, so we'll get a lot of news there. Shana Sissel joins us here. She's the founder and CEO of Banríon Capital Management out there in Chicago. I saw like Chicago wind chills like -30, -40. Shana, are you there?
Yeah, it was -11 when I was dropping my Rottweiler off at daycare this morning.
Oh boy.
But I also have a Samoyed, and my Samoyed is sitting by the sliding glass door to the backyard and just whining because I won't let him out. And he's like made for this, and he's very old. But when the temperature drops below 0, that dog has the energy of a puppy and just wants to be outside as much as possible. And I just keep trying to explain to him that mom is not going out there, and I'm not going to keep opening the door. So
I don't know. I think somebody's got to
in, or you stay out, because I can't keep doing this. But yeah, he's just whining. So it is freezing, absolutely freezing here.
Everybody has to deal with, I guess. Shana, what do you make of kind of the volatility that we saw come back into this market this week? It kind of felt a little bit like, early last year with all the tariff talk, and this year it was Greenland and so on and so forth. What do you make of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's definitely deja vu for sure. I've always said that I expected volatility to rise in the last half of last year and the first half of this year for these reasons. I think generally speaking, we tend to see these types of initiatives, the administrations, whether it be the Trump administration or previous administrations, tend to, with the new Congress coming in and people coming back from the holidays, all of a sudden people want to be productive and they want to set the tone for the year. And so I feel like a lot of years kind of start off this way, but particularly during the Trump administration. And there's just a lot going on around the edges with Powell obviously not coming back, and some of the things that have happened in January that I think have made him sort of want to be the evil genius in the plot at this point. So I think that this will continue through probably April or May. And then as we get a new Fed chair and things start to settle down and people start worrying about the November elections and start actively campaigning, you'll see like a shift in sentiment in terms of fiscal and monetary policy.
Well, in terms of shifts in sentiment, whether you call it Sell America or the end of U.S. outperformance, the events of this week look like they're going to result in reduced demand for treasuries. TCW's CEO Katie Koch calls it a quiet quitting, where global investors look for opportunities to diversify away from the U.S. And we've seen how India's holdings of treasuries have fallen to a 5-year low. Shana, how big a risk is the rest of the world selling off U.S. treasuries?
It's actually a fairly big risk. I was reading a piece by Strategas yesterday that was talking about this and was comparing it to sort of the Berlin Wall falling and some of the tension between the U.S. and European counterparts back then with Reagan, but noted that at that time there was maybe some tension, but there was trust, and there's no trust now. And for those reasons, a lot of the other developed nations are looking for alternatives to treasuries, because we've had, 20 years ago, from 99 to 2000, if you think about where we were then, we had this shift to rapid globalization of the economies across the world. And now we have deglobalization going on. It's a completely different environment. And a lot of that is stemming from the lack of trust and leadership from the U.S. In terms of economic development, economic initiatives.
And another reason why the 10-year yield broke out of its recent range, too, is because of the sell-off in Japanese bonds. In terms of spillover from those higher yields in Japan, do Japanese investors take their money out of treasuries in favor of fatter yields at home? Is that something that you see percolating?
I absolutely could see that percolating. If you think about it, again, the Japanese economy is quite different than we were 20, 25 years ago. And it's finally safer to invest at home for them. For 20 plus years, the Japanese stock market, Japanese bond markets were the furthest place you wanted to be. They had a deflationary environment, and it took decades for them to revisit or even get close to the record highs of the late 80s. But now we're there, and for good reason. I think the Japanese people, just like Americans, like you want to invest where you live. There's a domestic bias to investing, and that's not specific to the U.S., and Japan's no different.
Bitcoin, 89,000 roughly. What are you hearing in the marketplace about crypto these days?
Well, it's interesting because you haven't seen it being driven by a lack of risk appetite. The Russell 2000's outperformance recently and a shift to, riskier assets has continued. It just hasn't been in crypto. I think it's interesting what we're seeing. I don't think it's something that's long-term concerning. But I do think that as an investor, especially one that focuses on alternative assets, it's an interesting time to be looking at crypto. It's become largely institutionalized, which I think has taken some of the sexiness out of it for some investors. But ultimately, I think that long-term trends of the blockchain are supportive, and the institutionalization is broadly supportive as more and more of the large institutions make the Bitcoin ETFs and the crypto related ETFs and other investment strategies available to investors more broadly, which hasn't always been the case. And then there's more and more products. I think I mentioned this in the notes I sent over, but the amount of new buffer products related to crypto that have come out in the last 12 months is kind of mind-blowing. And not just Bitcoin and ETH either. You're seeing Solana related ETFs, buffers and otherwise, leverage stuff. All of those things are kind of coming out. So this broad institutionalization of crypto and going beyond Bitcoin, I think, is a longer term trend. So, as far as I'm concerned, I would probably be a buyer at these levels. Crypto has always been volatile, and this is no different.
Shana, thank you so much. Appreciate it. As always, Shana Sissel, founder and CEO of Banríon Capital Management. Stay warm out there in Chicago and let the beast out every once in a while to go outside, even though it's minus gajillion degrees wind chill. S&P up 5 points. The Dow minus 275. That's about 0.5%. The Nasdaq's up 96 points. That's 0.4%. So no real direction out there. The Tom Keene VIX safely below 16. 10-year Treasury yields 4.24%. WTI crude oil, it's up almost 3% here. $61 per barrel. Maybe a little tension there around the Iran news out there. We'll keep an eye on that. This is